Croeso, this is James, aka JP Harker, coming to you with another video. This is the second video I'm looking at series. I recently put up a video and it was about a series that I started, it didn't grab me, and I didn't continue with it. And I thought that's a largely negative video, even though I'm seeing it as just a point of view. People can think of it as, that's just him rubbishing some series. So I thought I'd give some examples of positive series where I took a chance on a first book and saw where it went. Now, two of these are by the same author, Jim Butcher, an author I came to like very much. First of these is, I think a lot of you will know and love this series, the Dresden series, and it's Stormfront. I had no idea what this was about. I've not read much in the way of, well, I have since, but I've not read much in terms of detective fiction before I started this. I've not read much in the way of urban fantasy before I started this, but it got recommended to me and I thought I'll give it a go. And this is one of those interesting ones where now I say to people, oh, this is one of the weaker ones, the series gets better as it goes along. And while I stand by that, even though it's a weaker one of the series, it's still a really good book. You can tell when you reread it that he was still working some things out. And when you reread it compared to some of the later ones, you think, yes, it isn't as good. But it's an example of, it's not as good compared to the others, but it's still really good. And it was still enough to grab me into reading the rest of the series. And there's been, what, 16 books in this at least, and I'm still going with it, even though people say this book was weaker. I say something very similar about Jim Butcher's other big series that I absolutely love, which is the Codexlera and Furies of Calderon. Again, in hindsight, this is weaker than the others. There are inconsistencies in it. There are problems with it. It's not got the same engagement that the others do. But it's still good. It was still good enough that it got me into this series, and I'm very glad it did. And it's sort of a shame that it ended, but it ended in a very nice, closed loop sort of way, so I can't really judge it for that. But yeah, it's another example. Took a chance on the book. Looking objectively, it isn't as good as the others, but still good enough. These ones, it's not quite to the same extent, but we have David Gemmell. It was the first David Gemmell book I ever read that was lent to me by a good friend that I used to work with, and it is Sword in the Storm of the Regante series. Brilliant book. Not as good, in my opinion, as some of the other David Gemmell books, and I've read loads of them since, and this got me into David Gemmell. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm just giving similar examples. Here's a book where, if somebody read it and said, I didn't like it, I'd probably be one of those people who said, yeah, but there's other ones and they're better. It's not as good as some of the others, but it's still really good and still worth having a go at. And the obvious one, this is a matter of personal opinion. I happen to think that A Game of Thrones is probably the best of this series, but I know a lot of people think, oh, it's quite heavy, it takes a lot of getting into, and it's only with the later books in the Song of Ice and Fire series that you can relax and read it because you're already immersed into the world, whereas you've got the hard work of getting into the world in this book. And once again, the same is true. People can be put off by this book, and in hindsight, yeah, it's a lot more getting into. But it's still a really good book. Unlike some of the others where they're weak in the series and therefore not good enough to continue. These might be weak in the series, but still strong on their own, strong enough to get you into it. And I want to flash up mine. Look, this one's strong. It's not as good as David Gemmell. It's still really good though. Yes, I just thought I'd give a positive video on, it's not all about give up on the first try. If the first one's pretty good, give it a go for the rest of the series. And in the examples of these four, pretty good becomes really good. And that's pretty much all I've got left to say, is a positive counterpoint to the other video I've done on limited reading time. So there we go with that. I shall leave it there. This is James, aka JP Harker. Bilbao.